The evening began with the golden glow of the setting sun spreading across the quiet suburban neighborhood where Emily and her husband, David, lived. Their home had always been a gathering place for friends, not because it was the largest or the fanciest, but because it carried a warmth that drew people in. Emily had spent the entire day preparing for the night. She moved around the house with determination, arranging platters of food, stringing up soft lights around the backyard, and making sure everything looked inviting. David had suggested the idea of hosting a small party with his close friends, something casual to break the monotony of their work-heavy weeks. Emily had agreed, though she carried some quiet nerves about it. She wanted everything to be perfect. David's friends had known him since college, and while Emily had spent time with them before, she still felt the pressure of making sure they saw her as a good partner for him. As twilight settled in, the doorbell rang. The first to arrive was Michael, tall and cheerful, with an easy smile that could light up any room. Behind him came Jason, whose sarcastic humor always made people laugh, followed by Chris, thoughtful and quieter than the others, but with a presence that made him easy to respect. Soon the backyard filled with the sound of laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses as the night officially began. Emily floated between conversations, her laughter blending in as she poured drinks and checked on the food. She loved watching David in moments like this. He seemed lighter, his laughter more carefree, as he retold stories from years ago. His friends teased him relentlessly, reminding him of embarrassing college pranks, and Emily could see how much he cherished having them around. But as the night grew deeper, something shifted inside her. While everyone else appeared relaxed, Emily felt a strange unease. It wasn't about anyone in particular, but rather about the way old bonds sometimes made her feel like an outsider. The men would occasionally slip into private jokes she didn't understand, leaving her smiling politely even as her chest tightened with the reminder that she hadn't been part of that chapter of David's life. Still, she carried herself with grace. She asked them questions, joined in their stories, and even shared a few funny moments from her and David's marriage that had the group laughing. Yet, when she stepped into the kitchen alone to refill a bowl of chips, she found herself leaning against the counter, staring out the window, and wondering why she felt so small in her own home. David followed her in not long after. He wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed her temple. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. Emily smiled up at him, though her eyes betrayed her weariness. "Of course. Just making sure everything's perfect." "You're amazing," David whispered. "You don't need to try so hard. They already love you." His words warmed her, but doubt still lingered. When they returned to the party, she noticed how Michael and Jason teased David about how lucky he was to have Emily. She laughed politely at their comments, but deep inside, she felt as though the compliments had sharp edges, carrying an unspoken weight that made her uncomfortable. As the night stretched on, music filled the air, and a playful energy began to take over. Someone suggested a game, something lighthearted, like charades. Emily joined, happy for a distraction. The group erupted in laughter as Jason dramatically mimed a scene, and Emily guessed it correctly almost instantly. For a moment, she felt included, even cherished. But later, when she slipped away to gather more drinks, she overheard a conversation between the men. They weren't saying anything cruel, but the tone caught her off guard. They spoke about the past, about women they had dated before marriage, and though her name was never mentioned, she couldn't help but feel invisible in their camaraderie. It stung more than she expected. Emily returned quietly, her smile intact, but her mind clouded. She wondered if she would always feel like she was on the outside of David's inner circle. She loved him deeply, but nights like this made her realize how much of his life existed in chapters she could never be part of. Later in the evening, when the laughter had softened into quieter conversations and the glow of string lights illuminated their tired faces, Emily excused herself and went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the muffled sounds of voices drifting up from the backyard. For the first time that night, tears pricked at her eyes. She didn't want to be ungrateful. She knew she had a good life, a husband who adored her, and friends who treated her kindly. But she couldn't shake the loneliness that sometimes came with being the outsider among people who shared a history she could never touch. Moments later, David entered the room. He noticed her expression instantly and knelt in front of her. "Hey," he said softly, taking her hands. "Talk to me. What's wrong?" Emily hesitated. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong. Tonight was fun, but there were moments when I felt like an afterthought. Like they were living in memories I'll never understand." David's expression softened. He cupped her face in his hands. "Emily, you are never an afterthought. Not to me, and not to them. I know it feels that way sometimes, but you're part of my life now. The most important part. All those old stories? They don't define who I am anymore. You do." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and David kissed them away. His words were honest, filled with the kind of sincerity that only comes from love. For the first time that night, Emily felt her heart unclench. She realized that while she might not share the same past as David and his friends, she shared something even more important with him: the present and the future they were building together. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other, until Emily finally smiled. "You should probably get back to your friends," she whispered. "They can wait," David said, pressing his forehead to hers. "You come first." Eventually, Emily returned with him to the backyard. The laughter had mellowed into easy conversation, and the atmosphere felt calmer. This time, when she joined the group, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like David's partner, confident in the love they shared. The friends welcomed her back warmly, and though the old jokes continued, she no longer felt overshadowed by them. The party wound down near midnight. One by one, the friends said their goodbyes, thanking Emily for the food and the hospitality. When the last car pulled away and the house fell into quiet stillness, Emily leaned against David and sighed. "It was a good night," she admitted softly. "It was," David agreed, pulling her close. "But the best part for me is always you." Emily smiled, her earlier doubts melting away. That night, as she drifted asleep beside him, she realized something important. Belonging wasn't about sharing every memory or being part of every inside joke. It was about the connection she and David shared, the love that bound them together no matter what. And in that, she found peace. The night party had started as a test of her insecurities, but it ended as a reminder of the strength of her marriage. Though there would always be moments of doubt, Emily knew that as long as she and David faced them together, she would never truly feel alone.